what's going on, guys? Arekkz here. Welcome to Days Gone. Today we're talking about a brand new game, and I'm joined by our resident zombie survival fan and expert, Paradise. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing really good. It's good to be in this video. I love zombie games, as anyone that knows me knows, so I'm excited to ask you some questions.
Yeah. Paradise is if ever like we discover a zombie game, it's coming from Paradise. He's the one that tells us about them. He's the one that was looking forward to get Days Gone. And the other week, I had a chance to go to an event and go hands on with it. Paradise didn't get to go, unfortunately, so I played it. But he's here today to ask me about it as a fan of these games. So if you guys do enjoy that, then I'd like to be super appreciated. And also, if you haven't entered our giveaway for a chance to win a console of your choice, be sure to click the link in the description box down below. So yeah, Paradise. I got to play for a couple of hours, so obviously I've barely scratched the surface of the game. We jumped in at the beginning to begin with, and then after about, say, half an hour of playing, they jumped us forward to a different save file later on in the game, so we got to experience some of the open world stuff. So with that being said, I've kind of had a little bit of an experience of early stuff, and I've had a little bit of experience as to probably what you'll be doing more of. So with that being said, what do you want to know?
So I have a lot of questions, and I'll get to the more juicy, zombie ones later. But to begin with, okay. I wanted you to tell me how you're, introduced into the game with the story at the beginning and the introduction, and then how that transitions, if it showed you that in what you played, how that transitions into throwing you out into the world to survive.
Okay, so I will say it was a bit of an odd introduction, I'll be honest. It started with a bike chase. It wasn't the fastest bike chase in the world. I'll say this: whenever you have a chase sequence, whenever you have cars, whenever you have bikes, you kind of expect to have a high speed chase. It was kind of funny that they weren't the fastest bikes in the world. I appreciate that's probably because they were piecing together parts, from what they can. But either way, you kind of get thrown in. It's very sort of cutscene heavy to begin with, so I feel like at the very beginning they're trying to push the narrative, because from what I gathered from the short time playing and from what I've seen from it, does seem like there is a story. They're really trying to sort of tell a good story throughout this. So the narrative is super heavy quite early on. You go through quite a lot of cutscenes, and there's cutscenes into little bits of gameplay back into cutscenes. So I'd say probably one of my initial gripes going into this was it was a tiny bit disjointed at the beginning, because there were parts where I just kind of wanted to play, and then it just throws me into another cutscene and stuff. But once you get past that, once you get that through that initial sort of 15-20 minute flow, you start getting into actually being able to kind of work through things, work through some missions, get to meet some of the characters. But yeah, I would definitely say it starts off very much more trying to tell you the story, who the characters are, making you care about some of these characters before you really start to get before you start to get.
Yeah, I mean, if your bike was going really quick, how are the zombies going to grab you off of it,
I mean, this is true. Although there weren't actually any zombies in the very first bit, so I was just chasing someone else on a bike, and I was like, "Yo, man, where's my nitrous at?" But maybe I've just played too much Trials, so maybe that's just me.
Fair. Well, that actually brings me to my next question, which is, I couldn't tell from watching the trailers and things if this is more like a survival game, kind of like State of Decay, where you're out in a big world, you can survive and build your camp and go and loot things, or if it's more like a narrative-driven story experience kind of game, more like The Last of Us.
Right. So I'd say it straddles the line. I would put it personally, if that's our meter and Last of Us is on the left and then State of Decay is on the right, I would probably put it slightly more towards State of Decay, in that there is a base, there are survival aspects to it, there is more stuff, kind of more open worldy stuff. So there is definitely a running story throughout it, but I feel whereas something like Last of Us is very, the story is the central thing that kind of drives you through. I feel like in this game, much like the other ones, there are the survival components that you can kind of just go off and do your own thing, and you can very much spend a lot of time just wandering the world and, doing kind of whatever you want. But there is also a story to tell. So it probably straddles the line between both. I would say it doesn't feel like it has as much on the kind of survival and crafting aspect of it that, say, State of Decay does, but it's definitely got more.
Okay.
More than, say, Last of Us.
Well, tell me about the survival aspects, because in Dying Light you've got a very interesting day-night cycle where night changes the world and makes it way more difficult. In other games you've got crafting. In some games you've got progression that increase your skills. Maybe they let you unlock abilities and things like that. Is there that in this game?
Yes. So firstly, this was kind of again like when we got jumped forward, we got jumped forward to a point where we actually had access to some of this stuff. So on the skill tree front, yes, there's kind of three main tiers for skills. There's I think one of them is like melee focused, one of them is weapon focused, and one is like survival focused. But yeah, you get points as you go through that you can spend into these trees to give you different combat abilities. I think I went down the melee tree so that like after meleeing enemies, I can then switch to my gun straight away and sort of shoot them. So because typically when you kick like a zombie, it pushes it back, and then so there's ways to expand on your skill set. So there's the skill aspect of it. There's also definitely the survival aspect. There are things to collect. There is crafting. I would say crafting, at least from what I got to experience in the game, I don't know whether there's a deeper level to it. From the crafting that I got to experience, it was more so like on the fly crafting. So for example, when you are out of ammo, you can craft like, not bullets, but you can craft like new crossbow bolts. Or like if you're out of like med kits, you can craft those. Or if you're out of say like throwables, you can craft like Molotovs. So there's a few things you can like craft on the fly. So whether there's more to the crafting outside of that, I didn't get to experience that during my playtime. But yeah, there's definitely like an on the fly crafting. So there is still incentive to go around and collect materials, because you will run out of ammo, you will run out of stuff, and you will need to craft it on the go. So there's that aspect to it. And there's definitely on the broader sort of survival aspect as well, there is like a base camp there. Again, because we only got to play like in a small slice, I don't know how that evolves over time. There are different base camps, but there are people there that you can do things for. There are like bounties, so when you're killing zombies, you can then turn those bounties back into the camp in exchange for money. There are there's people you can kind of go to trade in. I think you can trade in materials. You can get like items from this stuff. So there's definitely some of those components to it for sure.
Okay, so there is like looting.
Yes.
In the world and things like that, so you can get things, and that's and harvesting, I suppose, of like materials.
Yeah, like one of the cool ones was like you can just harvest from trees, and you can turn like the sticks into actual crossbow bolts, which is kind of cool.
Okay, and when you find like the zombies, how big are the hordes, and how dangerous are the zombies as well as the hordes? Like, is there small groups? Is there massive groups? Is a single zombie dangerous, or are they only really dangerous in groups, or is it if it like catches you off guard? How does it feel?
I'd say so. Because there's a few groups actually. There's there are zombies, but there are also like human enemies, and there seem to be like some kind of cult like people as well, and they probably presented more of a threat because they had guns and different weapons and whatnot. On the zombie front, the ones that I encountered, so while I was kind of walking through, I attempted to see them sort of spread out more. So there was a part during one of the initial intro cutscenes, I think it was kind of designed to try and show like the crowd tech, where the character you're with, he drives off to try and sort of like lure them away so you can go and do something, and that's when you start to see some of them form. I will say that I, in my time playing, didn't get to experience like a huge number of them. So I will say that if you encounter like a single zombie on its own, they're not massively challenging. But if you do get to that point where there's like you're outnumbered, then it can still, they definitely can overwhelm you. But then it also depends on kind of how you approach it as well, because there is a stealth aspect to it. So if you're, I spent a fair amount of time sneaking through the grass, because if you can sneak up behind them, you can just take them out straight away. So yeah, I would say I didn't get to. I think in the time that I played, I probably had more trouble fighting like the human enemies that had like sniper rifles and other guns than I did fighting the zombies.
Okay, well, tell me a bit more about the stealth, because I think stealth in these kind of zombie games is quite important for like hiding in a bush, throwing a rock or something to distract them so you can sneak past or get like a stealth kill. How in depth does it go, or from what you've played?
From what I played, it was more like there are areas you can kind of sneak into into grass. There's very obvious like large grassy areas, or like large leafy areas, and kind of like those big raised areas for you to kind of sneak between. And yeah, the idea is that you can then sneak up to the zombies and take them out. So I think it's kind of stealth on like a basic level, in that how you would expect stealth, right? You don't get seen, you can go up and you can kind of get those kills. I don't although you do actually have, having said that, I did actually have some rocks that I didn't actually use that effectively, but the fact that they're in your inventory, I imagine they're also there to kind of create distractions. So there's it's kind of as you'd expect.
Is there like a bow and arrow for silence kills, or silencers on your guns and stuff like that?
Definitely bow and arrow. We on the gun front, we actually only had a chance to test out two different guns. I think I picked up a couple from like some enemies. So none of the guns that I tested had silencers on. But yeah, there's a crossbow which you get quite early on, and that's actually really good. It does have like drop off on the bolts. You actually need to kind of like arc the shots and use that in the right way. But I used that. There was one part when I was playing through, and there was a camp, and I had to take out all the human enemies, and I think I managed to do most of it without them seeing, because I was using the crossbow bolt. So yeah, that's good for your silent kills. I would say that wasn't that effective against the zombies. So it's
the
probably
crossbow
more
wasn't
so.
that effective against the zombies.
Well, maybe it's just that my aim
Or was it
wasn't
just
good.
because you weren't getting headshots?
I mean, that is entirely possible. It is possible that my aim was not that great on the zombies because I was panicking. But yeah, there's a crossbow.
Well, is there special ammo for the crossbow as well? I mean, if you're like a Walking Dead fan, you've got Daryl and his crossbow, or it's like the iconic weapon for like a lot of zombie survival. Like, can you get special like poison arrows or explosive arrows or anything like that, or that you know of?
Not that I know of. I mean, I didn't, we only had basic crossbow bolts. There are, obviously you can craft them, so I don't know whether there's like additional ones you can craft, but not in the time that I got to play it.
Okay, fair enough. Are there any special zombies like bloaters or screamers or anything like that?
So, there are definitely different types of them. For example, the ones that I was exposed to typically, they're like, these are probably the most creepy ones. There are these tiny little, they're basically kid zombies, right? And they kind of walk around on all fours, but they don't typically attack you to begin with. They tend to like defend a little area, and if you get close, they get more scared. They'll run up to and like hide on the roof of a building or something. And generally speaking, it's just like if you invade their space, they will then run after you. But also, rather annoyingly, like, and you actually encounter this in one of the missions, if you like open a chest or something, sometimes they can run through and they'll just grab the item and they'll run away with it. So then you need to go and take them out. So they're kind of like your fast-paced ones. Then you have your kind of your bog standard zombies, and then outside of that, I don't know whether there are like bigger, tougher ones, but they were the main ones that I kind of got exposed to.
Okay, that's pretty. I like the idea of this. I don't think there's been that kind of zombie in a game before. There's been like the Left 4 Dead ones where which one is it? There was a type of zombie where it would sit there and cry, and when you went near it, it would go nuts. I can't remember what game that was from.
Yeah,
but that was a good one.
They were creepy, man.
What was the driving around like? Because it shows a lot to do with the motorbike and the world. What was driving around like in the open world?
Driving was cool actually. Yeah, when you like the handling for the bike is actually really good. Like once you're outside that initial intro mission where I wasn't going fast enough, but then when you get your bike later and you actually have access to the open world, it's actually really good. Like you can drift on the bike as well. Handles really nicely. There's also some really cool mechanics with it as well. So it does have fuel, so you do need to actually physically keep an eye on that. You have to refuel it. Also, if you are jumping off things or you land badly, you damage it. So as you're going throughout the world and you collect items, you collect like scrap metal and stuff like that, then when your bike gets damaged, you actually get to a point where if it hits 0%, like you can't drive it, and then you have to get off and physically repair it using the materials you've crafted. So that
you could break down like in the middle of like a dangerous area if you're
exactly
not paying attention.
that. Yeah. So it definitely pays to make sure you are collecting scrap metal as you go, because if you do get to that point, like I broke my bike in the middle of a lake, so I couldn't actually repair it because it was underwater, so I had to reverse it out and then repair it. But yeah, trust me to break it in the worst possible place.
Well, on that same note, how easy did the game feel to you? Because a lot of zombie games recently have had a lot of backlash from the community where they're saying it's not difficult enough, there's not enough zombies, they don't feel challenged enough when they're out looting and surviving. So how did it feel to you?
I'd say from my initial time playing, at least again from that early stage, I don't feel like I got to the point where I was being challenged too much, but it's quite difficult to say because the first part of my PlayStation was the beginning of the game where they're obviously trying to introduce you, so it's not going to be too tough. And then when they jumped us forward a little bit, it was when we had like a few skill points, but in the grand scheme of things, it's still quite early on in the game. So I feel like I didn't really get a chance to experience what they would have as, what they would typically have as the challenging content. There were a couple of missions, again, sort of going back to the ones where like I had to go and take out a camp and there were like human enemies. They were the ones that probably gave me more trouble just because, they had snipers and in fact, I went into a room once and a guy, like, I think he had I don't know whether it was a rocket launcher or he threw a grenade, something blew up and I died. So that was probably more challenging than, because I guess, because I spent a lot of time exploring the world, and if I've got my bike, then I was able to run away from a lot of the zombies. However, having said that, there was one thing that was actually really exciting, and it brings me back to the point you asked before that I completely forgot about it. There was one additional type of zombie. It was a zombie wolf, right? And
so
this thing,
they're zombie animals.
Yeah, this thing was Not cool, man. When I was driving through on the bike, you have this sequence where like it's running up by the side of your bike and it can actually keep pace with you. So whereas the regular zombies, they'll kind of be left behind a little bit, the wolf kind of keeps pace, and if you don't actually shoot it off like while you're riding, it will just jump and drag you off your bike. And that is probably where that's actually definitely where I died probably 3 times, because I kept on trying to dodge it and I was messing up the shooting and it dragged me off, and then the zombies that I was leaving behind, then they caught up. So I guess that's probably the first time in my play session that I died to the same thing a few times. So I guess that was probably my biggest challenge initially.
Right. That sounds like a feral in other games, or like is it the hunter in Left 4 Dead, something like that.
Yeah.
I think that's all the questions I've got, though. It does sound interesting. I obviously love zombie games. I really like the survival aspect of zombie games as well, and it sounds like it's got, you said, like a mixture of narrative and survival. So
yeah, I definitely think from my time playing, I think like I'll openly say that this isn't typically my genre, but from my time playing, I feel like if you for someone that loves this genre, I feel like there's definitely going to be something for both sides, and I feel like there'll be I definitely feel like there's going to be a story there. I don't know how much or how in depth or how much you're going to be attached to the characters, because again in these events you kind of jump forward and jump backward and whatnot, so I didn't really get a feel for the narrative. But outside of that, the open world stuff, there was some cool stuff to mess around with. So yeah, I enjoyed what I had to play, and obviously once it comes out and we get to play it some more, know some more, then you hopefully.
I would like to know more about the crafting system, as we get to know more as well. For me, like upgrading your base, upgrading your motorbike, crafting a new weapon, maybe attachments, that would make the game really cool for me. So maybe we'll learn more about that later on.
Yeah, hopefully. Well, yeah, if you guys do want to hear more about the game, or you want to learn more, or you want to tune in, then definitely let us know down below. Maybe it's something that Paradise might stream once it comes out, because obviously this is his jam. But either way, thank you for tuning in. Thanks Paradise for joining me, and of course, don't forget to stay tuned for plenty more videos. Thanks very much for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you want to check out some more awesome stuff from us here at Arekkz Gaming, then you should definitely try to catch 269 and Paradise Central streaming 6 days a week. You can find a link to the multi-stream in the description box down below. They play a wide range of games, and what's more, we also have the Endgame store. By watching their streams, you earn currency, and you can redeem that currency on the Endgame store for really cool prizes. Those can range from things like games, comics, and figures, all the way up to controllers, capture cards, and even consoles. So definitely drop by and become part of the community. Of course, if you enjoyed this video, then make sure you're subscribed and be sure to click on that little bell icon to turn on notifications so you don't miss our next upload. You can watch more videos by clicking on the options here, but once again, thanks very much for watching, take it easy, catch you next time, peace out.